Whenever we talk about cancer, it's usually genetics and genes that get a lot of the attention. In genetics, your genes, they do matter. Some people are born with certain variants of their genes that can increase their cancer risk. But as I alluded to earlier, most cancers are not caused by inherited genetic predispositions. And what matters pretty much just as much as your genes, and I would say even more, is how your genes are being expressed in your body over time. Again, this is where epigenetics come in. So cancer develops when your normal, healthy regulatory systems in your body, they start to break down or be pushed or bumped or whatever it might be. But we can see that whenever these cell repair processes are broken or dysregulated, they can increase our risk of cancer. And your epigenetics, not necessarily your genetics, your epigenetics can reflect how well or even how strained those systems are functioning. Your growth systems, your repair systems, your inflammatory systems, your immune systems can all be influenced by your epigenome. I want to start today by talking about two common sentences that are said to women after cancer treatment has finished. One of them being that you could not have prevented this, just go live your life. And the other one being just eat well and exercise going forward. And this is commonly what women are told if they were to ask, what can I do to reduce my risk of cancer coming back? What can I do to help get over the side effects of this treatment? This is a very common conventional conversation to have after treatment, where again, you're told that you couldn't have done anything, it just happened, go on, just do as you were before, or you're just told to go figure out how to eat well and exercise. And neither of those sayings truly feel complete, which leads a lot of women doing their own research, seeking out alternative and complementary care, and basically coming to us a lot of the time when they want to get more answers and more focused in what can we truly do to make a difference in your future. And the reason being is that one of them just removes complete agency and control, and it makes you feel like you don't have any ability or capability of controlling what happens next in your future. And that leads to feelings of helplessness. And I think it just doesn't resonate a lot with a lot of people. The other one, where you're just told to eat well and exercise, really, it gives responsibility to you, but it doesn't honestly tell you how to make that happen. And I truly believe that there is something we can do to meet in the middle here that is not being discussed. So bringing it back to the fact that you're kind of told that you have no ability to make a difference, just go live your life, no big deal. This is based on old medicine, old cancer research, where we used to think that all cancer was just called by genes. You're born with something you can't change, and it just happened because of the way you're born, and that's just the way it is. But we now know that there is more cancer caused by things in our environment than there is caused by a genetic predisposition. And I'll talk more about that and how even having a genetic predisposition might not actually make you very, always 100% likely to get cancer either. But I want to make sure that we're talking too about how you're not to be blamed for this. But first, let's talk about whenever we're talking about if someone tells you can't prevent this, it's completely false. Most cancer is caused by our day-to-day activities, the environment around us, and absolutely, we cannot control all of that 100%. We also want to enjoy our life, not live in a bubble. We have to interact with other people and air quality and whatever it might be. And there are some things that we can't control, but a lack of total control does not equal helplessness. We can influence how the body behaves over time. And it's not that we're coming at it with an absolute guarantee, but we want to come at it with a big push in the right direction with a strong influence. Because I really want you to hear that not having full control over whether cancer starts or grows or comes back doesn't mean you have no influence. It just means you don't have 100% control here. And that's okay. There's still a lot we can control. But that being said, getting cancer is not a personal failure. This is not what we're coming at today. This is not my personality. This is not my belief. So if you're coming and listening to this from, and it's kind of putting the hair up on the back of your neck here, I want you to raise that a little bit. This is not the case. Doing everything right does not guarantee that you have full protection against cancer. There's no test, there is no diet, there is no supplement, there's no special tea or whatever it might be, no lifestyle plan that we could give you 100% control of. We do not guarantee 100% control that you will never get cancer again. It's not possible. No one should be saying that. But there is a difference between taking control of your future after cancer in a determined way and trying to control everything. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're not trying to control everything. And whenever people start to realize this, you lose this sense of urgency and perfectionism, and you can start to let your brain relax, and it can start to focus on an absolute plan to help you and also enjoy your life without feeling that you have to be perfect all the time. So, with all of this information coming at you, everything that you feel like you should be doing, you should not be doing it all. Um, we do want you to have some sense of control, but perfectionism is not the goal. What it comes down to. And I know some of you may have come to listen to this podcast and you ate well before you got diagnosed, you exercised, you really managed your stress, you had no health history, health problems whatsoever, and you still got cancer. But that doesn't mean that you failed and that it was a complete waste of your time and you should have just drank Coca-Cola and eaten hamburgers every meal of your life. Absolutely not. Even when someone goes through cancer treatment, we have legitimate research that people who tend to come in from a healthier perspective with a healthier body tend to do much better overall, whether it's to get them through treatment better with fewer side effects and just more responsive to treatment, and then also to not get cancer coming back again in the future too. So no matter what happened, you still did your body a great service. And we're even going above and beyond cancer here when we're talking about these things. I bet you felt a lot better eating well and exercising and taking the right supplements and things like that despite getting cancer. So that's part of the goal here is we want to, yes, make sure that we're doing all we can to reduce the risk of cancer coming back, but we're also putting in effort to feel good and have a good life too. That's also very important. So I just wanted to first make sure that you don't feel blamed for having cancer and that you wasted your time if you did do well before cancer and now you have a diagnosis. And also to show you that not doing something is still doing something. We still want you to do something to reduce your risk of cancer coming back, typically above and beyond the standard eat well and exercise. And the problem now I'm going to talk about is just telling people to eat well and exercise. And then I swear I will get into epigenetics and how this all loops in. But the problem with eat well and exercise is that it is so vague. It is so not personalized. It is so surface level information. It's not taking into account your personal inflammatory levels, vitamin levels, stress levels, schedules, metabolic shifts, your treatment history. To just eat well and exercise might be all right, but we're also asking you to completely relearn certain systems sometimes, and to overcome basically the power of unhealthy programming in our society, where if you're strapped for time, the easiest and usually the only available thing to go do is to go grab some Thai food that's kind of laden with a lot of saturated fat and carbohydrates, or to go grab a burger, which is highly processed. We just have a lot of these things in society that don't allow people to eat healthy and exercise. And instead of just telling them to eat healthy and exercise, we need to look at what can they manage, what can they do, what's most important, and then help you to overcome the overwhelm and the troubleshooting and all that it takes in order to finally get to eating healthy and exercise. So yes, we're putting some responsibility and some ownership on how you can control your future, but you also are deserved a plan and a path of how to make that happen. So I hope you're kind of seeing that there is a lot of things broken in the health industry, but there's also a lot of ways through that. And I'm thinking you probably have come to some of your conclusions yourself and have made some changes too. And I'm glad that you have, because the problem is conventional medicine, it doesn't really go deep. It's not because they think that nutrition lifestyle is unimportant. It's typically because it's complex, because we want to take into account all of the things that are important for you and get a little bit more personalized and specific. It's also very time intensive to overcome people's typical habits and societal behaviors and things like that and the setup of it. So it's time intensive to help people to figure those things out. It also requires tools often outside of the conventional model toolbox. And to be honest, the priorities of conventional care are elsewhere on important things. There's just no time, no time to put effort into the prevention aspect a lot of the time to the depth that it should really be done. Which is why we're here today talking about functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, which is why you've come to listen here, because we do want to go deeper, and we have gone deeper on a lot of the episodes into blood work, symptom analysis. We talked about whole body support. We want to look at functional testing, which is part of what we're going to talk about today is the epigenetic testing, which is considered something functional testing. Functional practitioners will do. So I want to talk about epigenetic testing today and how it relates to all this because it truly does give us an insider's view to your own agency. It can tell us where we can see things being strong or vulnerable and how we can make a difference to influence our risk of cancer starting or growing or coming back. It tells us what changes need to happen next. It basically helps us to cut through information overwhelm too. It can provide a little bit more personalized support and detail into what specific foods or supplements are going to be best for you. And it takes into account your full health history, helping us to create this plan that's going to help you to the best of our abilities. Again, not 100%, but add an extra layer to help you to stay cancer-free after cancer. I want to begin talking about the difference between genetic testing and epigenetic testing, which is often something that's very confused. There's a very important difference between the two. So your genetics, you can think of them as the cards that you were dealt in life. You can't change whatever you were dealt. You can't just say, can I give you this card back and give me another card instead? They're given to you, and it's a game where you cannot change them out. They're basically the DNA that you're born with. Can't choose them, can't change them. But you do have your epigenetics, which are, on the other hand, they're more about how the genes are used. It's how you play the cards that you are dealt. Using your own skill, your own capabilities, you can change the game and how it's played out by deciding what cards you're going to play. So the epigenetics is going to look at turning your genes up or turning them down or keeping them quiet or making them loud. It's basically based on your signals that you receive over time too. So whenever you get specific foods or a stress response, even sleep, hormones, inflammatory levels, environmental exposures, even medications, these all influence your epigenetics that then can go change your genetics, which then can determine certain levels of disease or not, including cancer. So your nutrition, your stress, your sleep, your hormones, if we can influence all of these, it's going to have an influence on your epigenome. It can help to influence whether genes are expressed to cause cancer or not, which is pretty darn cool. And whenever we talk about cancer, it's usually genetics and genes that get a lot of the attention. And genetics, your genes, they do matter. Again, you're born with them, they do have an influence. And some people are born with certain variants of their genes that can increase their cancer risk. But as I alluded to earlier, most cancers are not caused by inherited genetic predispositions. And what matters pretty much just as much as your genes, the hand you're dealt with, and I would say even more, is how your genes are being expressed in your body over time. Again, this is where epigenetics come in. So cancer develops when your normal, healthy regulatory systems in your body, they start to break down or be pushed or bumped or whatever it might be. And then this is going to change like how your cells repair damage because we all come into contact with some damage throughout our day and our cells just have to repair that. And that's a normal process in our body. But we can see that whenever these cell repair processes are broken or dysregulated, they can increase our risk of cancer. Cancer also develops when growth signals are increased or not controlled in a regulated way. Cancer develops whenever inflammation is not resolved appropriately. It develops whenever your immune system doesn't recognize or clear abnormal cells as it should. And your epigenetics, not necessarily your genetics, your epigenetics can reflect how well or even how strained those systems are functioning. Your growth systems, your repair systems, your inflammatory systems, your immune systems can all be influenced by your epigenome, which is pretty darn cool. And if you are listening and you do have a genetic predisposition, your epigenetics will still matter, even if you had this genetic predisposition like BRCA1 or 2 or Lynch syndrome. Any of those vulnerabilities that put you at an increased risk for cancer, your epigenetics can still play a role here. Um, Basically, a genetic predisposition like that can make your gene more vulnerable to cancerous changes, but cancer is not necessarily inevitable. Um, Genes don't operate in isolation. They are still influenced by your epigenome, and again, your epigenome being influenced by your environment. And the thing is, though, like epigenetics doesn't erase your genetic risk. It doesn't really guarantee protection, but it does influence how strongly that risk is being expressed. So you can think of your genetics as the vulnerability, but your epigenome kind of being the volume dial. It can turn up your genetic vulnerability a lot more if we're not focusing on what influences your epigenetics, or we can influence your epigenetics in a positive way and turn that knob down, that volume down, so that it's not likely to have as big of a problem. Okay, so I just want you to know that your genes are not the boss. Your environment kind of is, and we can have an influence over that. And we're not aiming for 100% influence and control. We're looking at what can we control. Let's take a role here and an active role and make a difference. So epigenetic testing is done similarly in a lot of cases to genetic testing, where a lot of genetic testing is looking at saliva tests. So you do epigenetic testing with a cheek swab. We tend to send clients just a little box in the mail. They can do it at home very quickly and send it back to the lab. Don't even have to go anywhere to get it done, which is fantastic. And that can give us information on how the environment will interact with your body. So, just to be clear, epigenetics, it doesn't diagnose cancer or necessarily even specific cancer vulnerabilities. It's again looking more at the environment in your body, the environment outside your body. What can we do to influence these pathways to be less pro cancer? Also, this epigenetic testing, it won't replace any sort of blood work or medical screening or medical testing. It really just is going to add context to any decision making we have to make around specific foods or supplements, sometimes medications, because we can even see how well does your body break down medications. It is an extra layer of protection and lifestyle management. It is not a replacement for any of that at all. It's an extra bonus bit of very helpful information. So basically it's not a crystal ball. We can see how is your body going to react to things in your environment, but it's not going to tell us an absolute picture of your future even if you were to do things perfectly. There's a lot of different factors involved in encouraging cell damage, cell repair, and overall those processes that encourage cancer. But it is a part of the puzzle. It's also not a list of rules you must follow forever or obsess over or do 100% all the time. It is a guide, not a rule book. We can't we can't we can't just look at it and say this is it. These are the commandments I must live by, and everything must always fit in with that. Whenever we're creating plans, they need to be flexible and they need to also follow other avenues of the best possible research. Kind of what are your symptoms telling us? What are your other markers, like objective markers, like blood work telling us? So it has to be malleable. It is not something to obsess and be 100% focused on. It is a very useful layer of support. I also have to caution out, as I always do, if you are to DIY, do it yourself, kind of interpret your results. They do often come, the epigenetic test kits, they often come with a thorough reflection on the results, like a results review, sometimes like 50 pages. So again, not all of that is helpful. We even ourselves, we get reports back, and they're usually about 50 pages of information, and we might use only 20% of that because a lot of it is not really that well researched. There's a lot of research lacking in epigenetics in general. But from a clinical perspective, not all of it is clinically relevant, meaning that you might read about some things in theory, but whenever you put it in an actual person's plan, it doesn't really make sense or it doesn't really make a difference. So we also want to take it into account with your whole picture. Whereas if you are just looking at their report, the reports aren't looking at your blood work, your health history, your treatment history, your family medical history, even your environmental history. All those things are not considered whenever your epigenetic report comes back with that. And our team, we usually put in quite a few extra hours on learning how to interpret these test results. And then also, we've at this point collectively probably reviewed over 1,000 of these test kits. So just based on experience, we can really put together a plan. I'm not trying to just kind of say we're the only ones who can do it, but there's a big difference between having a medical background and a health educational background and trying to interpret a result kit that comes back with very little experience, basically. And then just the last thing I want to say, whenever I see common like misuses of this test, is it's really not something that's going to replace the strong human cancer research out there when it comes to building muscle, balancing blood sugar, vegetable rich diets. Even if you get something that says, and I haven't seen this before, but to use the extreme, you get your test kit back and it says that you shouldn't have vegetables. That's not necessarily true. Again, we'd have to look at that in context with a bunch of other parts, but especially with the best human research out there, we know that vegetables are good for stopping cancer. So we don't want to take one piece of whatever your test kit says that is butting heads with a really strong piece of research and just go with whatever your test kit says. You have to come at it from a holistic, whole body point of view. Okay. So, what do we look at whenever we're looking at epigenetic test results, and what kind of makes the biggest difference and the biggest part of creating these plans whenever we're creating these plans? What we are going to look at is typically, I think it's like five things, maybe, yeah, five things. So, we look at methylation, hormone balance, stress response. We look at your detox pathways, and we also look at metabolism of medications sometimes. So, let's start with methylation, which may or may not be something you've heard of before. But methylation is one of the main ways that the body can turn genes on or off. It controls the ability of your cells to grow. So it controls cell growth signals, supports DNA repair, helps inflammation and hormonal balance. There's a lot of different pathways within the body that this process called methylation controls. And you can overmethylate, you can undermethylate, and sometimes undermethylation is good, sometimes it's bad. It's all about interpreting it with a good balance. And looking at the methylation pathways on this epigenetic kit can tell us more about specific supplements or foods or whatever it might be that can encourage a more healthy methylation pathway, encouraging it's just basically like better cell repair, better DNA repair, discouraging inflammatory processes, just overall optimizing the functioning of your body's ability to protect against cancerous changes. So we can see how well do you methylate, what kind of processes are involved, and what pathways do we need to push in a more helpful way using specific nutrition and supplement suggestions. That's what we can look at in one particular situation. The other thing that I love looking at too is looking at hormone balance. We can understand more about the metabolism and clearance patterns of hormones in your body. So we can see, for example, are you more prone to making more harmful types of estrogen or do you make more helpful types? We can apply certain changes to encourage potentially more helpful forms of estrogen to be made. Can you protect your cells against harmful types of estrogen? Are you eliminating estrogen from the body appropriately? And again, this is actually a good opportunity to explain that there is more than just epigenetics involved. So when it comes to the elimination of estrogen from the body, yes, of course, hormone metabolism and the forms that you're making and the ability to remove can be seen in epigenetics. But what is also important is, do you have good gut health? Because if we're having regular daily bowel movements and good healthy microflora, like gut bacteria, then that's going to help remove estrogen from the body. Probably more important than looking at your epigenetics report. Are we limiting your exposure to estrogens in the environment? All these things are going to be used complementary to the epigenetic results that we're going to receive. We can also look at your stress response. And there's a part of the test that just in layman's terms, it tells us that you are a worrier. So you worry about things, or are you a warrior? You're good at fighting off things. So if you're a worrier, you're a little bit more susceptible to a heightened stress response. Whereas if you're a warrior, you might be able to manage stress a little bit more heartily. So we can see what are you and what pathways are involved here so that we can support your body extra, for example, in potentially like breaking down stress signals a little bit more quickly. We can also look at detox pathways and your ability to protect against reactive oxygen species. Do you have the ability to produce adequate amounts of glutathione? Are there certain ways that your blueprint of your body is made up that it doesn't allow you to make that? So maybe we need to give you more building blocks to build glutathione, which are typically found in certain types of protein. Do we actually need to give you some glutathione a couple times a year in order to kind of push this protective response that helps to prevent your cells from being damaged, because glutathione being one of the major antioxidants in your body. You can look at other antioxidants as well. There are test add-ons as well. You can look at the metabolism of medications. One of them, for example, being tamoxifen. You can look at, do you have particular enzymes that get made in your body to make the tamoxifen into the active form of the drug? And then the active form of the drug is what's actually going to help to protect against future cancer. Some women don't have the ability to make a great amount of the active drug. Therefore, the tamoxifen might be a little bit less helpful. And there are research papers on that showing that people with certain epigenetic predispositions may not make tamoxifen in the active drug form, which means that they have an even lowered response to tamoxifen. That being said, I don't want you all out there panicking because you're taking tamoxifen and you don't even know if it's working. Again, this is a layer. We need more research. I would never absolutely consider taking someone off of tamoxifen if that were the case. But let's say that they're at a very high risk. Maybe tamoxifen was shown to be beneficial, but then they get their epigenetic results back saying that potentially they're not making the active drug. Then we would have a conversation with their doctor around, is there another type of medication we can switch them to? Are they maybe entering menopause? Maybe an aromatase inhibitor might be a better option for them. It's a whole conversation there. And I don't want you to panic. I'll tell you, my mom's gone through breast cancer, and this is not a test that we've had her do because in the big scheme of things, it's a little bit less important for her based on her whole health history. So no panicking. You don't absolutely need this test. We still have tons of research that is not based on looking at these genetic predispositions that shows us that tamoxifen can be very effective in many people, and maybe even those people who have the inability to create the active form of the drug. You might still be getting enough protection. Another layer is what we're providing here. I think that's basically the main parts of the epigenetic tests that we look at. It does tell us a little bit more about cool things like, are you susceptible to caffeine giving you anxiety? Are you susceptible to being more likely to be gluten intolerant? It tells us more about, are you potentially susceptible to being more lactose intolerant? We can talk more also, and we use this information to look more at cardiovascular disease risk. There's certain genes that can put you at a higher risk of heart disease, like heart attack and stroke, high cholesterol, things like that. And we can see that on your epigenetic test as well. I still tend to lean more towards blood work for that, where we want to look at a cholesterol panel and looking at additional testing like ApoB and lipoprotein little a. But that's a whole other conversation for a future date for sure. But those are the main parts. So we look at, again, methylation and your ability to protect cells against damage and repair damage. We look at hormone balance and metabolism, stress response, detox capacities, metabolism of medications, and just other things to do with food like your lactose, caffeine, and gluten sensitivities. So all really cool things to look at. And again, when we have this kind of blueprint and this guide as to how your body epigenome is set up to interpret the environment, then that can make us have better ideas of the best foods to include more of, the best supplement choices to push certain pathways in healthy ways. Maybe sometimes having data points gives people something to identify as more important to them and then makes it more likely for them to carry out certain steps. So if you see that you're really predisposed to having a high stress response, it's your genetic makeup, maybe you will feel more motivated to go and do specific relaxation strategies, whether it's journaling or meditation or deep breathing or emotional freedom technique and tapping, whatever it might be. You might feel like you're more motivated or it's a higher priority for you to do. So basically, this extra layer gives us more focus and direction when creating your treatment plan. So I want to point out that we don't want to use epigenetic testing to justify extreme diets. Like I said, if you see something on your test that says you do really well with something, we don't need to go too full throttle on it. There's a balance here we want to find. We don't want you to over supplement or overdose based on certain pathways either. Like a single pathway is not important. It's multiple pathways we want to put together and tell the full story when it comes to choosing your supplements. We don't want to chase perfect expression either. We want to look at more functional improvement. So how are you feeling? Have your symptoms reduced? Is your blood work improving? If we can use that as opposed to just being like, I've got this methylation problem, I'm just going to supplement this one thing. That's important in some respects, but we got to look at what are we trying to fix here and how are we going to mark that as an improved state. And again, no ignoring very strong research and lifestyle foundations because you got some fancy numbers on a test. Often people will do that because it feels like the epigenetic testing is way more advanced and it seems like it's more important because it's more advanced or more fancy or more, you got numbers. But that doesn't allow us, and we cannot ignore the greater lifestyle and exercise research and things like that. Those are so foundational. And we see so many women still who are relatively healthy, but still haven't nailed down the specific blood sugar balance or the specific muscle building that we need to see, which are way more important than your methylation, for example. So the goal really isn't perfect genes. It's more about a body that is responsive, safe, steady, more resilient is kind of what we're aiming for here. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And overall, the saliva test can be done at home. Extra layer of support is what we're getting at. It needs to be combined with the strongest research, as well as your entire picture of health and your other data points. And it is one tool that we use with our clients in the roadmap to recovery. Every client we work with actually gets one of these tests at home, and we use that in combination with their blood work, with looking through their health history, their treatment history, any even family medical history, just anything we can gather on them. We put this into the whole picture in order to create a plan that's going to get more specific with their nutrition suggestions, looking at everything from macronutrients to your fiber intake and your antioxidant support and specific foods based on your cancer diagnosis, and making it actually reasonable for you and not just kind of forcing things to happen. And we look at your blood work and we want to go deeper into your blood sugar and stuff. And maybe your epigenetics also hints that you have blood sugar regulation problems. So we're going to get you to exercise and maybe try some berberine or whatever it might be in order to make this plan for you. And overall, we're trying to create this whole body picture of health using all of this data to get more specific and to take things off of your to-do list so that you can actually create something that you can do every day and create these long-term habits. So if you do want to learn more about working with us and how can we create this research-backed plan for you that's a little bit more specific and manageable, if you want to head over to flourishaftercancer.com/next steps, I'll put that in the show notes. You can book a roadmap call, and the call is there so that we can make sure that we're actually a really good fit to help you, that our values align and that our goals align, and that it's something that we are well versed in helping you with. The call is all about kind of learning more about who you are and what you've already done and what you're going through and what are your current goals. And if it sounds like something that we can help you with, then we will explain to you what the process looks like in more detail. We'll answer any further questions that you have and ideally get you signed up if it seems like we're on the same wavelength, basically. Just a heads up that it is not an appointment. It is not a consultation. We will not be providing any specific nutrition or supplement advice on that call. I hope that you've gathered through everything that I've taught that it requires more than a 45-minute, 30 to 45-minute conversation to truly give you something that's effective. If anyone's giving you a full plan in 30 to 45 minutes, it's probably nothing more than what you could have gotten on your own through Google or something like that. To us, it's more about creating something that is deep and strong and effective and something we can help you to grow into over months and years, because cancer just it's not something you can do in a month and block. It's something we have to help you to create over years and really ingrain these lifestyle changes for you that are manageable with enjoying your life for decades to come. And that's really, truly our goal. So again, that's over at flourishaftercancer.com/next steps. You can book that free roadmap call and chat with one of our program advisors and just learn a little bit more about, is this the right step for you? All right. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Here's to you flourishing after cancer. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Flourish After Cancer podcast. If you loved this episode, please be sure to leave a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Sending all my best your way, Dr. Megan.